Damien's going to
Yeah, I'm just going to go through the commits that were made since last month. I'll skip the boring ones, but so it starts. You can see the mouse on the screen. It starts there. I mean, by boring, I mean there really are things that are not even worth looking up. I mean, they're important commits, but like, this is just to change BLE settings. So feel free to look at it yourself if you think it's interesting. Andrew committed something to fix some invalid block addresses in certain cases. This one is really boring. That was a boring fix. Another boring one. Fix calculation. That's also yeah. They're just very simple fixes. This one is a bit more interesting. So this doesn't even have any change. It's so boring. But it was just switching the embed TLS version to a stable branch, which was actually a downgrade from 2.17 to 2.16. But in terms of like, if you have a look at the commits that were made on the 2.16 branch, they're much more recent. They've been made in. They continually add commits there to maintain that branch, whereas 2.17 has been stale for a while. But that doesn't affect ESP32 because that uses it on the IDF included embed TLS. AArch64 support was added in the basic exception handling and garbage collection, which is nice. So AArch64 is like the new Mac M1, right? It's a Cortex. It's ARM based, 64-bit ARM. So yeah. No, sorry, newer. So we'll go back to newer. So we're going forwards in time. Yeah. Specify board and port. Okay, so it just makes it more convenient to do make erase in the ESP32. This one, adding a new board for the MIMXRT port. Here, this is getting a bit more interesting. Enable FAT file system on Raspberry Pi RP2040. Yeah, that's pretty simple, but so you can use it on SD cards, for example, or format the internal file system with FAT instead of little FS. Robert added timeout to RP to uart. So you can, not only can you specify timeout and timeout char, but it now doesn't block when you do a read or a write. It'll exit without. If there are no characters, the read will actually return instead of waiting forever. Also support for inverted transmit and receive lines. That's compatible with the ESP32 API. We're trying hard to keep things nice and uniform. And a small improvement for PIO to the bit masks was only 8 bits when you can have up to 32 pins in a row for your outputs on PIO. That was a simple change but important. Some blocking behavior on get buffer. This is a nice one to be able to change the CPU frequency on the RP2040 using the standard machine.frequency call. Can go up to 270 megahertz, down to 12 megahertz. Quite cool.
270, isn't it? 170?
125 is what it defaults to, but it can go up to 270. I'm not sure if that's in spec, but it certainly works.
I thought 170 was this.
Yeah.
What they advertise anyway, I think.
I think you can even get to 300 sometimes if you cool it down, but yeah, they
Want to call it?
because I think for certain things like HDMI you've got to clock it at a certain frequency,
Right, okay.
and
That's
they
cool.
they overclock it quite a bit. But yeah, so you can play it. That's fun to play around with.
Yeah, that's
I think that's not reinit. Yeah, okay. When you change the frequency, it just reinits the UART so that you don't lose your prompts. That's just a simple thing. Pico stick update, Pico stick 8 is so boring. Oh yeah, on ESP32 now, the SPI, if you initialize it without specifying your pins, it will actually use the default pins as documented. Previously, you actually had to specify the pins like this, so that's good. more user friendly.
But was it the specifying part in the board file?
No,
That's
no.
new? No, but that's new?
Oh, this bit here. No, this is not board file. This is just the defaults.
No, but you also support doing it at the board level now. Is that new?
You can
Because
override
that's
them at the board level, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you define these things in your mpconfig port.h file, you can define the default SPI1, SPI2.
Yeah. But that's new, right?
That's new.
Because I've added that to my boards now as well. That's
Okay.
awesome. Yeah. Because that fixes the problem. I was going to speak to you about adding that to everything, like the default
I2C,
pins and
yeah.
I2C and everything else, because of that conflict. Because that basically solves the issue that we spoke about ages ago, where the default pins don't work for all the ESP32s.
Okay.
Because like the Pico D4 uses pins for uart1 for the flash. And if you try to pin it uart1, it crashes the
breaks.
device because it
Okay.
kills the flash, right?
Okay.
But now I can just put them in the board
Well,
file.
yeah,
It will-
in principle.
Yeah.
For SPI you can, but yeah, we
SPI
can
you
do
can,
the, okay.
Yeah, I've done those already. But,
Well then, yeah, I mean, it's an easy, we just copy that pattern for the I2C and the UART. Yeah, it's really just this bit here.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, well, yeah, I can add that to my list. Simple rename, reformat, testing things. Enabling error no module and MicroPy port, that's a very one line. Enabling more Python features. Yeah, so bringing the RP2 port in line with the STM32 and ESP32 in terms of the features that it has. Added CMath, complex numbers, collections, and special methods like __ radd and stuff like that. So, because the RP2 has lots of memories, lots of flash, so you can enable those features and make it a fully featured board. Signal class as well added, machine.signal. Refactor RP2 so that it used the, everyone's now using the same CMake files. Yeah, it used to have its own custom CMake files in the RP2 port, but they're all been deleted here, which is just cleaning things up. Boring. Small fixes, minor test fix, test improvement, small thing, very minor thing. The bare arm port, which has been around since the very beginning, was improved so it actually runs on hardware now, and the it didn't say. Down here somewhere in the I added a README for that as well. So this thing builds in at 61,200 bytes, and that includes that gives you, doesn't give you a prompt, but it includes the compiler and the parser and the VM and everything. So it's a full system, excluding prompt, that can execute Python code in 61,200 bytes. So that's pretty small. It would be great to get that under 60,000 eventually, but I guess the reasoning behind this refactor was to, because before it was just missing a few things to actually make it run on a board, and to make it run on a board, you can see now, okay, this is all I need to get MicroPython outputting something. You can't input stuff, but just output stuff at least. And I think it's completely self-contained, so everything in this directory is what you need to get it working, apart from the core MicroPython. So there's no standard library, there's no printf, there's no anything else that you need. Everything is in this directory now, and so it's kind of a good way for you to see exactly what's needed to make something run, including the build system. So I tried to minimize everything for it to be simple. This diff is a bit of a mess because things were added and subtracted, but in the end, I was quite happy with it coming up quite nice and clean. And so it'll run on a standard Pi board and output some stuff that is based on where are the strings. Yeah, it executes these. It executes this string, which you can change.
Thank you.
That was nice. Minor rename, fix, and then the sort of, I guess the biggest thing is adding support for user C modules for CMake targets. So we now have RP2, ESP32, and Zephyr ports all use CMake natively. And user C modules is where you can have like ULab or something else you wrote and make a custom build that includes these extra C modules. And so this was added for RP2 and by these wonderful people down here. And it wasn't such a big change in the end, which was really good. There was just a bit of searching here for dependencies, and everything else was pretty simple. Well, simple in hindsight. Took a bit to get there. And that's really good. So the examples are updated to add CMake support as well, and shows you how to do that, and then also the documentation. So Phil Howard did a good job doing all those parts: implementation, examples, and documentation to explain how to do CMake support for user C modules. And then a minor fix for RP2 port, which was random USB failures, so now fixed as well. There is also a pending pull request for ESP32 support for user C modules, which is I'll merge very soon. There was just a small feedback on that. So yeah, that will be good, and then hopefully it also works for Zephyr in the end. So that's really good, and I think, well, tomorrow will be the 1st of April, so it will be released, time for a release, which I'm trying to do every 2 months at the start of the month. Yeah, and I'll do everything I can to make that happen. And that'll be good. So that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Any questions? I can take.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Sure.
The Renesas port, do you like with the merge stuff?
Yeah, I saw that. I have just been so busy that unfortunately things like that zoom past my eyes, and I'll have to look at it. But I don't have any. It would be good to merge it. Yeah. I just have to look at it.
Not urgent, no.
I don't have any boards, so I'd have to get some boards to. Well, I don't have to. Do you have some?
I've got them, yeah, I've ordered them.
Okay.
For some reason, my DigiGo was on hold. I want my ABN certificate again.
All right.
Rather annoying.
Yeah, I'll order some boards too. I did get some STM32G series as well, because there's that outstanding edition.
I'm about to put the L4P.
Okay.
It's just an enhanced L496.
Okay.
I don't think it'd be much different, but I'm on board with them on. Yeah.
But have you got experience with the Renesas parts?
No, but I'm sort of interested in the 5 volt pump. It'll be the first 5 volt
Okay.
MicroPython, and that's good in automotive and industrial applications. And it can also drive power MOSFETs directly because of the higher output swing. Useful as well. And having a buffer.
Yeah. Well, having.
Yeah, and I mean, that's Renesas' strength in automotive electronics.
Okay.
That's why they do the 5 volt pump. And Freescale do the 5 volt. And Sam series of 5 volt. There's a few of them around, and there's a market need for them.
Okay. Yeah, I have no problem including that.
And it looks like
That's good.
they're pretty keen to support it properly.
Okay.
What they
Yeah,
said.
I'll reply with some positive words about that. Yeah. Good. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Damien. Thank you.
Always.